I always thought the check engine light on a 2004 Chevy Trailblazer had a more honest soul than half the people at a cocktail party. It just is what it is. It's not pretending to be a Mercedes when it's leaking oil. It tells you the problem, plain as day, with a little yellow light. No whispers, no backhanded compliments, just a blunt, binary truth. That's why I liked my job at O'Malley's Auto Repair. The problems were tangible, and the solutions involved a wrench, not a white lie. My brother Derek, though, he loved the cocktail party. He loved the performance of it. He was a senior wealth management architect over in Westbury, which is just a fancy title for a guy who convinces people with too much money that they need even more. He wore ties that felt like silk, but cost more than the transmission I just rebuilt. I'm Leo, by the way, the younger brother. The one who didn't apply himself, if you were to ask my mother. The last time I saw him face to face in a family setting was at my parents' 40th anniversary dinner. We weren't at a fancy restaurant. My mom, God love her, wanted it at her house on Maple Street, the same house we grew up in, with the same creaky floorboard in the hallway. She'd made a pot roast that was a little too dry, and the good plates were out. Derek and his wife, Gianna, sat on one side of the table, a shimmering fortress of designer labels and clinical perfection. I sat on the other, next to my dad, who was more interested in whether I'd fixed the rattle on his old F-150. The conversation, as it always did, drifted into Derek's orbit. He was holding court, a glass of sparkling water in his hand. He was sober, always sober, but he could get drunk on his own words. So Richard, that's my biggest client, the one who developed the Meridian Plaza, he's terrified, Derek said, his voice carrying the practiced, sympathetic tone of a man who profits from fear. Market volatility has him up at night. I had to spend 3 hours on Tuesday just rationing his anxiety. He's sitting on $7 million in liquid assets, and he's worried he'll have to delay buying the beach house in Hatteras. Imagine that. Gianna, who had the equivalent emotional range of a mannequin in a store window, tilted her head. Tragic. That house had a 4-car garage. My dad chewed a piece of pot roast, his expression unreadable. I just pushed a carrot around my plate. This was the ritual. Derek would broadcast his proximity to vast wealth, and we were supposed to be awed by the signal. But then he pivoted. He always did. He needed a juxtaposition, a before to his after, a shadow to make his light seem brighter. He looked at me. Not with malice, exactly, but with a kind of theatrical pity. It was worse. Speaking of financial stress, he said, and the sentence hung in the air like a premonition. Leo, I'm not saying this to embarrass you. You know I love you. But I was talking to my branch manager, and I worry. People in your line of work, they don't plan. The feast or famine cycle of a blue-collar trade. One week you've got a blown head gasket to fix, the next week the bay is empty. And you don't even have a real 401k plan, right? He said it so gently, so reasonably, that for a second you could almost believe he was a concerned family member instead of a man sharpening his own image on the grindstone of my supposed failures. He wasn't asking if I had a 401k. He was informing the room that I didn't. He was telling everyone I was broke without using the word. My mom's face tightened with worry. She put her fork down. Oh, Leo, is it that bad? Derek, can't you help him with one of those, what are they, index bonds? No, Mom, I said, my voice quieter than a whisper. I felt the heat rising up my neck, a flush of humiliation. It's not like that. I'm fine. I wish I'd said more. I wish I'd stood up with a banker's box full of statements and slammed them on the table. But that's not me. My pride doesn't come with a loudspeaker. The truth was, I was okay. More than okay, in a quiet way. I bought my grandpa's old place, a small two-bedroom bungalow on Cedar Street, from my parents when they moved into the smaller house on Maple. I had a 15-year mortgage and had already paid down a massive chunk of it. I had no credit card debt, a 2007 Toyota Tacoma with 180,000 miles that ran perfectly, and a separate savings account with over $40,000 in it. My life wasn't a financial emergency. It was just small. Deliberately, peacefully small. The night ended with Derek giving me a pitiful clap on the shoulder, his hand heavy and damp. "Head up, little brother," he said. "The first step is admitting you have a problem. My door is always open." A few weeks later, the rumors started drifting back to me. A high school buddy of mine who had become a realtor asked me over a beer if I was okay, saying Derek had told his wife's sister I was one unexpected expense away from losing everything. At O'Malley's, Mr. Henderson, a retired teacher who always brought me a black coffee when he got his oil changed, leaned in and said, "Leo, my son-in-law has a landscaping business. If you need steady weekend work, I could put in a word." The poison was spreading. My brother, the good man, who just wanted to help, was drowning my reputation in a river of well-intentioned pity. I'd become a cautionary tale he could use to start a conversation at networking breakfasts. A hot, slow-burning anger started to replace my usual quiet. It wasn't the words that stung. It was his certainty. His absolute, smug certainty that his definition of success was the only one. Then, on a slow Tuesday morning in late October, my cell phone buzzed on the greasy workbench of Bay 3. I was under the hood of a Honda Civic, but when I saw a 1-800 number with an area code from the other side of the state, I wiped my hands on a rag and answered. Normally, I'd ignore it, but something made me pick up. "Yes, is this Mr. Leo Vance?" The voice was professional, female, and colorless. "Speaking." "Mr. Vance, this is Catherine Bell with the Security and Fraud Department at Crestwood National Bank. We're calling to verify a scheduled wire transfer on your savings account ending in 8814. We just want to confirm it's legitimate, given the amount and the recent nature of the account opening." The air compressor in the shop let out a loud, sudden hiss, and I nearly jumped out of my skin. I pressed the phone harder to my ear. "I'm sorry," I said, my voice already climbing in confusion. "Crestwood National Bank? I don't have an account with you. I never have." There was a pause. I could hear the soft clicking of a keyboard through the receiver. "Mr. Vance, I'm looking at a savings account opened 6 days ago on October 19th. The primary account holder is listed as Leo Thomas Vance. The Social Security number matches yours, as does the date of birth and address on Cedar Street." The world tilted. The grimy, familiar comfort of the shop felt suddenly foreign. "No," I said firmly. "That's wrong. I've never stepped foot in a Crestwood National. What kind of transfer are you talking about?" "A wire transfer in the amount of $71,450 is scheduled to be sent to this account from a third-party brokerage. We flagged it because of the large, round-figure nature and the immediate setup of a bill pay system." 71,000. The number echoed in my head, meaningless and terrifying. "This is identity theft," I said, the words feeling like glass in my mouth. "I'm looking at a socket wrench right now. I'm not moving 70 grand. Do not, under any circumstances, send that money." "That's why we're calling, sir. You need to freeze this account immediately. We can stop the transaction for 24 hours, but you'll need to come to a physical branch with 2 forms of ID to file an identity theft affidavit. The nearest branch is in Oakwood." That was a 45-minute drive. I told her I'd be there in an hour. The second I hung up, a cold, almost clinical shock settled over me. This wasn't a panicked moment of, "Oh no, my money is gone." This was far eerier. This was a ghost account opened with my name, my social security number, my address. Everything but my soul. Somebody had spent days, maybe weeks, constructing this lie. They had my social, they had my address. This wasn't some random hack from overseas. This was someone close. Someone who knew where I lived. My mind was a frantic, paranoid slideshow. I thought of my mail sitting in the unsecured box on my front porch. I thought of the old documents in my glove compartment. But the social security number, who has access to that? A family member with a mind for malicious theft? A disgruntled former customer? The sinister presence felt suffocating because it was faceless. Someone was trying to bury me in a financial crime, to funnel a massive amount of stolen money into an account with my name on it. And I was walking around with grease under my fingernails, completely oblivious. I told O'Malley I had a family emergency. He saw the look on my face and didn't ask a single question, just nodded. The drive to Oakwood was a blur of adrenaline-fueled theories. Every car behind me at a red light felt like it was following me. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles went white. By the time I walked through the heavy glass doors of Crestwood National, I was a coiled spring. Catherine Bell was a middle-aged woman with a sharp, intelligent face and a no-nonsense demeanor. The nameplate on her desk said VP, Security and Fraud. She took my license and passport, made copies, and pulled up the account on her computer. The air in her small, glass-walled office was cold and still. "We've frozen the inbound wire," she said, and a small, involuntary breath of relief escaped me. "The money is in limbo. It hasn't landed. But look here." She turned her monitor so I could see the screen. It was the account's transaction history. My eyes scanned it, seeing nothing but gibberish. Then I saw it. The deposits. Small, almost diagnostic amounts. A $10 deposit from a mobile check. A $50 transfer from an account at a different bank. These were test transactions, the kind a thief uses to see if a newly created account is functional, to build a bridge before they drive a truckload of cash over it. And the source account for the $50. My blood turned to slush. The name on the sending account wasn't some shell company or a stranger's name. It was printed in stark black pixels on the screen. Derek R. Vance. The account type was listed as a joint family checking account. The shock was so total, so complete, that for a moment I thought I was dreaming. It was a surrealist punchline. The brother who had spent years publicly diagnosing my financial illness was the very virus trying to destroy me from the inside. The humiliation he'd heaped on me was a carefully constructed alibi. He painted me as a broke loser, so when the fraud fell apart, the story would write itself. Desperate, bankrupt mechanic steals from wealthy brother. It was a perfect, monstrous frame job. "Mr. Vance?" Catherine's voice came from a million miles away. "Are you okay? Do you know this account holder?" I couldn't speak. I just nodded. The betrayal wasn't a clean, sharp cut. It was a deep, septic ache. This wasn't a stupid, impulsive act. The test deposits, the timing, the brokerage account. This was planned with the cold, calculating precision of a man who understood the clockwork of finance. He was going to transfer over $70,000 from one of his wealthy clients' brokerage accounts, let it sit in my name for a day, and then either drain it or, more likely, watch the system catch up to me. He'd destroy me, not in a fit of rage, but with the quiet, detached click of a mouse. The drive back to Hillbrook from Oakwood was the longest hour of my life. The initial shock curdled into a cold, murderous fury. I didn't go back to work. I couldn't. My hands were shaking too much. I drove straight home, locked my doors, and sat in my quiet living room, watching the clock on the wall tick past 5 p.m., then 6 p.m. I knew I had to confront him. Not on the phone. I needed to see his face. This wasn't just about the crime. This was a profound violation of the most primal bond. I thought of all the times I'd looked up to him as a kid, the time he taught me to ride a bike. And now, he was a stranger wearing my brother's skin. I needed an answer to one question. Why? Why would a man who had everything, money, status, a trophy wife, a gleaming facade of a life, risk it all to destroy the brother he'd declared too pathetic to matter? I didn't call ahead. I wanted the element of shock. I waited until I knew Gianna would be at her Thursday evening yoga class. I got in my Tacoma and drove to Westbury. His house was a monument to his ego, a massive brick colonial with floodlights that lit up the manicured lawn like a stage. I parked on the street and walked up the long flagstone path. The sound of my boots on the stone felt like a countdown. I rang the doorbell. The chime was a deep orchestral sound. The heavy oak door swung open, and Derek stood there in a cashmere sweater and designer jeans, a glass of what looked like iced tea in his hand. His face flickered through a micro-expression I'd never seen before. First surprise, then a flash of irritation, and finally smoothing into his practiced, patronizing smile. "Leo, this is a surprise. Everything okay? Truck breakdown?" The condescension was automatic, a reflex. I'll never know where I found the calm. It was the calm of a man who has already seen the bomb go off and is just watching the smoke clear. "We need to talk, Derek. Inside. Now." I walked past him, into the grand foyer with its cold marble floor. The house smelled like lavender and nothingness. He closed the door, his expression hardening. "You know, usually people call. I have clients to deal with in the morning." "Is one of them the owner of a brokerage account you're trying to drain for $71,450? I said. The sentence was clinical, quiet, and devastating. The glass in his hand didn't shatter, but the color drained from his face so fast I thought he might faint. His eyes went wide, not with anger, but with a raw, primal terror. The mask of the sophisticated financial advisor didn't just slip. It was ripped off with violent force, revealing a panicked, cornered animal. He opened his mouth to speak, but only a dry, clicking sound came out. "Crestwood National called me, you son of a bitch," I said, my voice still terrifyingly low. "They wanted to verify a wire transfer to an account opened in my name, with my social, my address. And the test deposit they traced? It came from your joint checking account, Derek. You, my big brother. You tried to set me up for a felony." He staggered back, leaning against the grand staircase banister for support. Leo, it's not. You have to let me explain." "You've been telling the whole world I'm so broke I'd steal $1 from a church collection plate," I said, taking a step closer. "You built the narrative. You laid the foundation. And then you were going to bury me in it. You're not just a thief. You're a monster." Then, a sound I'd never heard before filled the cavernous house. A sob. It was a choked, ragged, ugly sound that came from a place of absolute ruin. Derek, the golden boy, the man with the perfect teeth and the 7-figure client list, slid down the banister until he was sitting on the bottom step, his head in his hands. The iced tea glass tipped over on the marble, the amber liquid spreading like a stain. "I'm ruined, Leo," he whispered, his voice cracking with a terror and shame so profound it was almost physically painful to witness.
I'm so utterly ruined.
I stood there, frozen. This was not the script. The script was denial, a fight, a screaming match. Not this complete and total collapse. What are you talking about? He looked up at me, his eyes red, his face blotchy and stripped of all pretense. The confession that followed wasn't a justification. It was a man vomiting up the poison that had been killing him for years.
It's all gone,
he said, gesturing weakly at the massive, beautiful, empty house around him. Everything. The investments, the savings, the equity in this house. It's a hollow shell. For 2 years, I've been making a series of bad investments. Not with client money. Client money is sacrosanct, untouchable. But with my own. I got into a private real estate investment trust. A sure thing. I leveraged everything. I took out a second mortgage on this place. Gianna's spending, you have no idea. The debt just kept piling up, a silent, invisible avalanche. Then the trust collapsed 3 months ago. The fund was frozen. Every penny I had is locked in a legal battle that could take a decade. He took a shuddering breath. I am the broke one, Leo. I am the one expense away from losing everything. This car, the clothes, this house we're sitting in, it's all a lie on borrowed time. The bank is going to start the foreclosure process in 6 weeks. I owe more than this place is worth. My head was spinning. The revelation rewired my entire understanding of the past decade. The cruel, mocking pity wasn't about me at all. It was a projection of his own self-loathing, a desperate distraction. But it still didn't explain the crime. So you tried to destroy me? To frame me for stealing from your client to save yourself?
No!
The word was a desperate wail.
I wasn't trying to frame you. I was hiding. I was running.
He wiped his nose on the sleeve of his $1,000 sweater.
The $71,000 isn't from a client's brokerage. It's from Gianna's secret trust fund. Her father set it up. She doesn't even know it exists until her 40th birthday next June. The statement comes to my office. I have power of attorney over it. I was going to borrow it, just for a few months, just to stop the foreclosure, to buy some time, keep up the illusion until the legal freeze on my real estate fund was lifted. It was a bridge loan to myself.
He looked up at me, his eyes pleading for something I couldn't and wouldn't give. But I couldn't just put it in my own account. Gianna watches our joint accounts like a hawk. And if auditors from her father's estate ever looked, I needed a place to park it. A clean, unsuspecting vessel that wasn't connected to me. An account in your name. You were perfect. You work at a garage. You have no credit cards. You'd never check a credit report. The account would sit there for 6 months. The money would be safe. And then I'd put it back before her birthday. Every cent. I swear to God, Leo. I wasn't trying to frame you for theft. I was just using you as a storage unit. I was going to take the fall myself if anything happened. I was going to tell Gianna I lost her money, not that you stole it. I'm a coward, but I'm not that kind of coward. My only goal was making the money vanish from me and reappear before anyone noticed. The silence that followed was profound. The logic was so twisted, so breathtakingly arrogant and pathetic, that it was almost brilliant in its depravity. He hadn't set me up for a crime. He'd set me up as an accomplice to a secret. He'd wrapped my entire identity in a lie because he saw me as invisible. I was a mechanic with a simple life, so simple, so broke, that no one would ever suspect a fortune was parked in my name. I was the perfect ghost. I could have called the police. The account,
the test deposits, the confession. I had the digital assault recorded on my phone from the moment I walked in, a habit born of watching too many crime shows, a piece of insurance I prayed I'd never need. The betrayal was a criminal act. I had him. I had all the power.
But I looked at him, not as my rival, but as a human being. And what I saw wasn't the arrogant titan of finance, but a hollowed-out husk of terror and shame. His entire life had been a performance, and the curtain was crashing down. The revenge of seeing him in an orange jumpsuit was tempting, a hot, satisfying meal my anger was starving for. But it wouldn't fix anything. It would just make the mess public, breaking my parents' hearts and leaving me right back where I started. I didn't offer forgiveness. That's a clean, tidy word for a clean, tidy emotion that didn't apply here. I offered mercy. It was a cold, hard, businesslike mercy. "Here's what's going to happen," I said, my voice the kind of quiet that commands absolute attention. "You are going to call Catherine Bell at Crestwood's fraud department right now, on speakerphone. You are going to explain that you opened the account as a surprise gift for your brother and mismanaged the paperwork, resulting in the alert. You will verify that all funds are legitimate and be transferred back to the trust account in Gianna's name immediately. You will close the account in my name tonight." He started to protest, to thank me, but I held up a hand. "Second," I continued, "you will never, for the rest of your life, speak my name in a story again. You will tell everyone, our parents, your friends, your clients, that you were wrong about me, that I'm the most financially stable person you know. You will publicly and repeatedly correct your lies. You will rebuild my reputation, brick by brick, in the same rooms where you tore it down." He was nodding, a frantic, pathetic yes man in his own marble hallway. The humiliation he'd inflicted on me was now his burden to carry. It was a far more poetic justice than a jail cell. I didn't leave him with a hug or a promise of brotherly love restored. I left him sitting on the steps, a shattered man in a beautiful, empty monument to his own lies. The silence of that house as I closed the door was the loneliest sound I'd ever heard. 2 weeks later, my mom called me, her voice full of a kind of bewildered joy. "Leo, what on earth did you say to your brother?" "He stopped by for lunch yesterday. He couldn't stop talking about how smart you were with your money, how proud he was, how you were the only person he knew with real financial integrity. He even said he wanted to follow your example." She laughed, a sound I hadn't heard in years. "I don't know what's gotten into him, but it's lovely." I was in my driveway, wiping a smudge off the windshield of my old Tacoma. The air was crisp and smelled like fall. "Just had a talk, Mom. A real talk." I looked at my small, fully paid home and realized real success isn't built on debt or appearances. Derek's life was a fragile house of cards. Mine was built on honesty and stability. The truth protected me, and in the end, quiet integrity proved stronger than any lie.